welcome to the Rangers News YouTube channel. My name is Cameron Willis, and this week, ahead of what promises to be a crunch Old Firm match, I'm joined by Jordan Carlisle and James Black. Rangers go into this match 16 points clear of Celtic with a kind of carrot dangling in front of them that they can go 19 points clear at the halfway point in the season, albeit with their rivals having 3 games in hand. We've won the last 13 matches. Celtic, conversely, have had a minor kind of upturn in form. I think they've won the last 4. So they go into it with a quiet confidence, knowing that they have to win. Rangers know that they can heap the pressure back on Celtic with another victory. The first Old Firm game of the season ended 2-0. This one promises to be a mouth-watering clash. What's your initial thoughts on it, Jordan?
I think it should be a really good game. As you say, Celtic were really in disarray for a while, and they've come back into it a little bit more composed and sort of sure what they're doing now in comparison to a couple of weeks ago. But Rangers have responded so well to that, to the League Cup exit, which could have been a real nervy thing, a bit of a derailment for the season. But I think big wins after that. The Motherwell one was a real test after going behind early doors, and they've come back after that. So I think it promises to be a really good game, and one where going into it from a Rangers perspective, I think people will feel fairly confident that if Rangers turn up and play well, they will win. And the prospect of going to a guaranteed 10-point lead, even if Celtic win their games in hand with over 20 games played in the season, is just so much stronger than any position Rangers have been in for a long time. So it should be a brilliant game, and one where neither team will be holding anything back, you would think.
James,
yeah, I mean, we spoke after the St Mirren game, and I said bring it on, and completely the same just now. I'm really looking forward to this. It's a real chance for Rangers to make a massive statement, and basically take the destination of title completely out of Celtic's grasp and make it Rangers' title to lose. So it's huge.
Yeah, I think it's mad because the swing is so. It's like a proper 6-pointer, a proper title race 6-pointer. Like, if Celtic win, they take it back to within 4 points. They're buoyed. They're more enthusiastic than at the second half of the season. It did stark contrast to rioting outside their stadium. If Rangers win, the riots may well ensue again. So on that, which of the two sides do you think is under the most pressure heading into this match?
Celtic, without doubt. They're defending champions. They are the team that's won the last 12 trophies in Scotland now. They've got everything. I mean, I think Rangers have got absolutely nothing to lose, really, going into this game. It's one where, all right, Rangers maybe you can't afford, not afford it. You don't want to lose it, but if Celtic lose it, it's basically the end of their title hopes. If Rangers lose it, it's a hiccup, but it's hardly lights out. So the pressure's all on Celtic this weekend.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. As I sort of said there, that both, I don't think either team will be holding anything back. At the same time, a draw is not a bad result for Rangers in the context of things. Yes, the way the season's gone, sort of everyone connected with the club will be expecting to win if they play well, but at the same time, a point is also fine, because when you look at sort of the size of the gap at the minute, and the way Celtic have played, sort of the fragility with Celtic at the minute is the thought that can they actually go on a massive run where they're going to bring all this back at some point during the season, or are they too vulnerable and will drop points at times and therefore need to win the Old Firms to really make a difference. So it's definitely Celtic that are under the most pressure, but I also think that Rangers, sort of the mentality in the camp this year is that they're putting quite a lot of pressure on themselves in terms of high standards, and you could see that with Gerrard after the game yesterday. I think performance levels the last couple of weeks in the last couple of games maybe haven't been brilliant. It was very slow yesterday. The start was very slow, sort of maybe akin to away performances of the past, and it really didn't look like creating much until nice wee bit of play with Hadji and a bit of luck with a deflection for the goal. A big mistake from St Mirren for the second as well, and then it was cruising. So they capitalised well on the opportunities that present themselves, but it wasn't a fantastic performance, and Jared was pretty clear with that after the game, talking about people not being secure enough in possession for being Rangers players and that sort of stuff. So standards will be driven high, and again, I sort of, as I think probably pointed out loads of times before, about how I think a lot of the players at the club are there for the big games in Europe and stuff like that. That's what they really look forward to. This is a massive game as well, and I think for Gerrard, in terms of his reputation and everything, he just sees these as big opportunities to get more attention sort of to the cause and how well things are going. So plenty of pressure they'll be putting on themselves, but from outside it's all on Celtic.
Yeah, so after on them kind of stumbling Rangers performances, it's got a lot of people kind of debating who will start this match. I think the first major dilemma is between Philip Helander and Leon Balogun. Helander obviously came back in against St Mirren. He got the Rangers TV man of the match. I think Balogun was impressive against Hibs. It's surely a good dilemma to have, but James, which one do you think is going to get the nod?
For me, it should be Helander, but I kind of get the sneaking suspicion away that it's going to be Balogun. I don't know whether last night was about getting a bit of sharpness into Helander or giving Balogun a breather before a big game at the weekend. Gerrard does seem to have that wee bit more faith in Balogun. You kind of look at some of the selections in recent weeks, and it has been Balogun ahead of Helander. So I think he is probably going to go with Balogun, but it wouldn't be my pick.
Jordan, do you think that's could you name the rest of the defence alongside that one?
Yeah, it'll be Tav, Goldson and Barisic, but I think for me it's Helander as well. And I get what James is saying. It's definitely hard to tell because to me it's Helander's the one with experience. He's played against Celtic before, and he's succeeded there, clean sheeted at Parkhead in October. And I just think he's the more composed defender of the two. He's the better defender. Balogun is a better athlete, and there's no doubt about that. He's very good in the air, very quick across the ground. But I feel that allows him to make up for initial mistakes or initial positioning problems, whereas Helander doesn't really have those problems in the first place. He was poor, really, really poor away at Benfica. But I was writing something earlier on. I think that's the only thing that really stands out of when he had a really bad game since he's come to Rangers. He's so in control a lot of the time, and his total lack of emotion in nearly all scenarios makes him a good man for this sort of game, because he can sort of take everything out of it and just defend. I was surprised he didn't play against Hibs, but then him playing against St Mirren sort of suggested that when I looked at it, I thought, this is getting minutes in him before he plays against Celtic. And I think he sort of passed that test with flying colours at a ground where Rangers conceded 3 recently. He was very solid, and I think, as it was pointed out on commentary pretty early on, there was a lot of sort of responsibility on him in terms of distribution, because John Obika was just sitting on Connor Goldson, and he passed that test fairly well as well. So it's Helander for me, and I think he will start.
I think it'll be Helander as well. I agree with both of you. I think that he is the kind of better defender of the two. I think it's really complements Goldson more, because there are similarities between Balogun and Goldson. I think that having Helander beside him is a little bit of variation in defence. So I think it'll be him, but I would trust Balogun to do a job as well. I think that he can come up big if called upon, but I think it's a sign of how strong the squad is, how much strength and depth we've got, and that's a solid back five. In McGregor, Tavernier, Barisic, Goldson, and either Hollander or Balogun. I think whoever he picks, it'll be solid. On to the midfield, which has obviously been affected by 2 injuries to key players, in Ryan Jack and Scott Arfield. I think both might have started. I think both have been big players in Old Firms in recent seasons. How big a blow is that for Rangers going into this game?
Yeah, massive losing both of those for it. Yeah, and I think both would have probably started on Saturday if they were fit. Definitely one of the two, but I think both would have probably been in the side. So it's a big blow, and I think it kind of leaves the side picking itself in that regard now come Saturday. I think it's just Davis, Aribo and Kamara. I think when you look at like the likes of Zungu, he's not done enough to kind of merit coming into the conversation for a start yet, I don't think. So yeah, it kind of limits Gerrard's options a little bit.
Do you think,
Yeah,
John?
Jack wasn't there. Well, sorry, he was not fully fit and put on the bench, came on as a sub in October, so they could do it without him. I think Arfield, is a guy who would definitely be in my team for this game just because of the energy and the tenacity that he brings and the fact that he's been there before in successful games. I think it changes the dynamic a little bit because Aribo is a guy who I think Jared would rather go for a slightly more solid 3, but you're right, James, in that he's not going to trust Zungu to start. So Aribo will be in there, and it gives Rangers a more attacking setup than would probably have been the case normally, because it's the sort of game where you might see, as I sort of said, that Rangers don't want to lose the game. So you might have seen the 3 in midfield, and then Aribo is one of the 3 attacking players. Had his hand not been forced, so it does mean it's a more attacking setup. But Aribo's ball play is just incredible, and I think it's more. I think it sort of comes to the fore more when Rangers are in a good position, doesn't it? Because when he's then able to sort of dictate things, slow things down, do his own thing, he's absolutely brilliant on the ball. So he'll probably be tested a bit in terms of looking in behind him and trying to track runners and stuff like that. But the platform, you would think that Davis and Kamara can maybe give him a bit more freedom and have that sort of connection between the midfield and attack. So it's still strong midfield, and Kamara will be key again though, because he was brilliant, wasn't he? Against St Mirren, has been brilliant for some time. So he'll be key covering for Barisic and Davis to pull the strings.
Yeah, I think that's nailed on, that midfield. There may be a little kind of outside chance of Hadji dropping back if he wants to start him and also play Kent, which we'll obviously come on to in a minute. But for me, somebody's going to have to replace that tenacity, that hard work, that effort that you get from a Jack or a Arfield. And I think it's a big game for Joe Aribo. The spotlight will be on him a little bit because he's starting in the place of them, if he starts, but it's likely that he will. Him and Kamara have got great kind of understanding with each other. It's a big game. They're both quality players. That's normally, as the cliche goes, with the Old Firm is kind of won and lost. So be a key battleground. I think from Celtic's point of view, they're going through a real kind of variation in their midfield. I think that I was reading that they're playing a diamond, and they've got 2 players in Sorrow and Turnbull who are coming in. I think probably Scott Brown will return. So it's a key battleground in the Old Firm, and I back them to go out and do it. But I do think that somebody's going to have to offer it that wee kind of edge, and the natural kind of edge that Arfield and Jack give you might be a wee bit of a blow, but I still think we've got enough about us with that midfield 3. So moving forward, I touched on it there. The front 3, I think 2 of these positions are maybe nailed on, but one of them is up for debate. So for you, Jordan, does Giannis Hadji start or does Ryan Kent start?
Ryan Kent starts, I think, which is harsh on Hadji because he's looked really bright recently, and a lot of times I think when Rangers are slow, he's the guy who can really provide that spark. And I think you can see that he was probably hurt by not playing regularly earlier in the season, and I think particularly against Hibs in the first half, he was really clearly very, very up for it, and I thought he was brilliant to get across for the goal because it was decent striker's instincts, which is not really what he'd be noted for. He does have that tendency to drift in and out of games though, and I think in terms of your work ethic that you're looking for as well, when you're also down in midfield and Aribo's in there, you're not wanting, Aribo's game's not built on 50-50s. Obviously, many of Arfield and Jax, they both have a lot more to their game than that, but that's where they're really comfortable. He's not comfortable there, and Hadji is not. That's not what he's built around, not the physicality and that sort of stuff. He also doesn't have the pace, and I think that's probably the key thing. I'm waffling there, but I think his lack of pace is the key thing. Kent's done so well against Celtic in the past. He started the season brilliantly, has been poor recently. I thought he was really poor against Hibs, and he's just in one of those ruts where nothing really comes off. But I think against Celtic, he knows he's done well there against them in the past. He knows that he's going to get more space than he normally gets, and I think he's got to play based on what he's done before. And sort of looking back now at what Jared said last night, it sort of does suggest that he's going to do that, because he was talking about he's not going to pick the team on form. If he did pick it on form, Hadji plays, but picking it for the opponents and the occasion, it looks like it probably can.
What about the other two positions, James? Who do you think will fill them?
I think that's Roof and Morelos. I think it has to be those two. Morelos has shown the last couple of games that he's looking like he's right back to his best, and Roof's just scoring for fun. He can't seem to stop him scoring just now. So it all comes into who takes that third position. And I think, and I've seen Gerard's comments last night, I think it's going to be Ryan Kent who gets it, but I think it should be Hadji. I think Hadji's been brilliant recently, and I think it'd be quite harsh on him that he doesn't get the jersey. But Gerard seems to see something in Kent that's kind of tailor-made for this game that Hadji doesn't have in his locker, so I guess we'll see. But it should be Hadji, Morelos and Roof for me.
But I think this is Kent's game. Do you know what I mean? He's the man for the kind of big occasion, or the Glasgow occasion. I think they're banking on it. But even when he hasn't been playing well and he's been a little bit wasteful and stuff, he always shows for the ball. He never hides. He's not the kind of player where it kind of passes you by, which is a wee bit in contrast to Hadji. And when you're putting him into such a high pressure, high octane game, I think there's a danger of that happening with Hadji, where there's a guaranteed commitment from Ryan Kent, and you're guaranteed somebody that's going to get on the ball. But having said that, Hadji's been throwing himself around, but he's been taking bruising challenges. He's added that to his game, whereas before maybe that was making him a little bit more timid. He's kind of snapping into things, and if you've got him from the bench, it's a good option anyway. So I think it'll probably be Kent, based on what he's done before and how much he relishes this game. But I think Hadji's in with a decent shout. As for the other two, I mean, Morelos against St Mirren was brilliant. He's spinning me one-touch passes, coming deep, being like a little pivot, and he was really, really impressive. And I mean, if he's got to start, he just rough them defenders up, and then Roof scoring goals for fun. I actually fancy him to get on the score sheet as well. From a Celtic point of view, I think that Christopher Julian's a doubt. I think he flew into a goal post yesterday. Who else? They're going to play their goalkeeper. But apart from them, who do you think is firstly the key men for Rangers tomorrow and for Celtic? And if they have any weaknesses, how do we exploit them?
I would say that just when you're saying there about just summing up about Kent, I was just thinking one separate point is about Barker playing at Celtic Park, and the fact that because Rangers just dominated midfield, the fact that he had a really poor game didn't really matter, but the pace that he had offered something different. So I think that's also a thing for Kent, that look, it doesn't need to come off tomorrow, but you can get away with it. Pace is the key. But I think in terms of key players for Rangers, I think Roof is going to be really big. Another guy who has shown in Europe that he's a big fan of the big occasion capable of spectacular. And at times, I think he works really hard in terms of what he actually does on the ball. There are lulls in games where he doesn't contribute a huge amount, but when it comes to turns in and around the box, he's got sort of an ability in there that sort of no one else in the squad has, and he can score all different types of goals. So I think he'll be really, really up for it. Massive player, as is James Tavernier every single time the Rangers play, and Connor Goldson. Those are probably the three. But as you say, it's very important in midfield to win that battle. So Stephen Davis has a good game. Rangers have a much better chance of winning. And I think from a Celtic side of things, Turnbull has been obviously their sort of standout, and Sorrow, I think, probably in the last couple of weeks, two guys who weren't playing previously. And that probably tells you a lot about how the rest of the players have been performing all season, that the regulars, it's taken an injection of guys that weren't playing to turn things around. So I think Turnbull's got plenty of goals recently, and he's probably the biggest threat that way. And Edward struggled this season, but he's obviously a quality player and will be a big threat for whoever plays at centre back.
Yeah, Tavernier's going to be massive for Rangers as always. It's always a weird one to try and actually pick out kind of key men in these games, I think, because there's far too often where it's kind of you expect someone to go into the game in good form and they just don't turn up or whatever else. But I think it's going to be a bigger matter of which team collectively turns up rather than kind of individual key men having good afternoons. I think we've seen it particularly recently where Celtic just haven't seemed to click, and they've quickly fallen apart. So I think if Rangers can capitalise on that, it's going to be key to getting 3 points and a big step towards the title.
I think it's a kind of full house of James Tavernier. I think that sets a tone for the team. He's got loads of energy, and I'd agree with you as well about Connor Goldson. He's a huge figure for Rangers. But it's interesting that neither of you said Alfredo Morelos. Is tomorrow going to be the day that he finally breaks his duck for Rangers? Not tomorrow.
I don't know how many times we've answered this question in written or audio or visual form, and he's still not done it. So I don't know if we've been jinxing it in the past by saying that we thought that he would and that sort of stuff. I think the way that he's playing this year, genuinely, the style of his game at the minute, makes him less likely to get the chances that he's got in the past and missed. But you would think at some stage during the game with Rangers at home, he's going to find himself in and around the 6-yard box at some point, and there'll probably be at least one chance that comes his way. Whether he takes it or not is up for debate. They've sort of managed without it a lot of times in Old Firms recently, but I think the question, even though it's not been so much of an issue this season, is if he plays, he has to stay on the pitch for the whole game. He cannot be getting sent off, because that's the sort of momentum changing thing that Celtic are absolutely after, and the sort of gift that they're after at the minute. So we thought that discipline wise he'd been brilliant for months until the incident at Dundee United, and he just cannot afford to do that again, because he's been trusted so many times in this game, and it hasn't come off for him personally, but that hasn't been to the detriment of the team every time. But whether it's a performance, he needs to produce a good performance and stay on the pitch. And if he finally scores, then that'll be a real sign, probably, that it's Rangers' year.
Robert, for you, James?
Definitely wouldn't bet against him scoring. As Jordan says, there's we've went over this a million times before in the past, but no, I think you look at his finish against St Mirren, it certainly looks like he's got his confidence back, and that's been the biggest thing that's been lacking for him recently. So if he gets a chance, I certainly wouldn't bet against him.
It was a huge goal that for him. I don't think I wouldn't care as long as we win. I think that's the most important thing. So have you got any kind of closing thoughts on the match or the potential ramifications from the match and what it could mean in the title race?
I just think winning makes everything so much easier for Rangers. So you can look at it as 90 minutes, one massive effort towards things and doing stuff accurately and clicking and looking to be creative and strong at the back. And if the win is secured, then it makes things so much easier for the rest of the season. It doesn't guarantee anything, but it gives a leeway that means Rangers really need to struggle for significant periods to not win the league. So it's just they've got themselves into such a good position now. But as you say, earlier a defeat brings it back to theoretically what could be 4 points, which makes it actually quite tight. So there's so much motivation there to get it over the line, and this is a chance after a couple of seasons of failings and the League Cup knockout, when everyone thought that was going to be the end of the trophy drought. This is a time to finally, go another step towards proving the mentality doubters wrong and that sort of thing. So yeah, just huge game, and it should be a cracker.
Massive. I don't think there's anything I can really add that's not been said already, but it's a huge game. It's season defining for Rangers, so both teams.
For me, I think just go for the juggler. I think that the fallout from their poor run of form will just be completely repeated. I think that for them, perhaps the worst fear is just watching us kind of gallop to this title. And I think that a win here puts us in very good stead. And I think that a win for them galvanises them. So a lot of it, they're kind of on a wee bit of sixpence, and it could turn either way. I think that for Rangers, the mentality stuff that you pointed to, Jordan, I think is huge. I think go out, prove that we've got the mettle. I expect this to be professional. I expect this to be relaxed. I expect this to go in there and get the job done and not kind of buy into the occasion. But I'm immensely excited for it, and I hope it's a great match. Just before we go as well, just kind of touching on the fact that it's the 50th anniversary of the Ibrox disaster, where 66 Rangers fans went to the match and never came home. It's obviously a huge kind of moment in Rangers history, and it's emotional that it's reached such a huge anniversary. And it's sad that there won't be any kind of fans there to kind of pay honour to it because of COVID-19 restrictions and stuff. So yeah, I think it was important that we just kind of touched on that and just gave our own kind of little tribute to the supporters that lost their lives on the 2nd of January 1971. So yeah, thank you for listening to this video. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. We will be back post-match, and hopefully we've all got big smiles on our faces as Rangers look to go 19 points clear on the Scottish Premiership title race.